I'm really excited. Today we were going to talk about something different, and which we still will talk about libido at some point, but I woke up this morning and felt inspired. So we took a twist, and today we're going to talk about love languages, which I think even outside of the TTC journey is a really important piece for successful relationships. But while I was just thinking about this morning and last night about how knowing your personal love language, knowing your partner's love language, and how that can actually improve your TTC journey. So if you've heard of love languages before, if you know your love language, pop it into the comments. I'm super, super curious how many of you have heard of this. In this platform I'm using, I unfortunately can't post in the comments, but after I'm done the video, actually, you know what? I'm just going to take 2 seconds and do it right now because I want you guys to be able to see it. So let me find you. Let me find the video on actual Facebook. Bear with me for 1 second. And I'll pop the link in the comments so that if you, there we go, there's the quiz for you guys. So if you haven't done the 5 languages quiz, or you maybe have, but you don't know, now I can't find my notes. I shouldn't have clicked away. There we go. Or you don't remember if you did, or your partner hasn't done it, there's the quiz for you. Oh, hey, Erica. I saw that you said quality time, and I actually laughed a little in my brain. I wonder what Corbin's is. Do you know? Have you made him do it? So let me know. My love language is a bit of a mixture. So mine, which you know what? It's been 3 years since I did the quiz. I should probably redo it now that life is definitely different, but I bet you it would be the same, is still acts of service and quality time were mine. They were kind of like at the same level. So the 5 love languages, how they can impact your fertility journey. I think this is a really cool conversation. It's a really useful tool to empower all relationships, not just with your partner, with your kids, if you have them, with other people in your lives, with family members, with friends. The love languages are how people are going to not just respond, but also act out towards you as well. And so by knowing each person's individual love language, we can tweak how we're showing them love, which is what's really valuable. So we can strategically use this knowledge in the fertility journey. So if you haven't taken the quiz, grab that link. Have your partner take the quiz as well, because knowing both of yours is going to be crucial. So this way, when you are going through the fertility journey, the 2-week wait, your day one blues, which we talked about in the group yesterday, or any other time in your life that is harder, you know, when you're hurting, when you're grieving, when you're maybe mourning what could have been, you can actually have already had a healthy conversation prior on how you guys can support each other through this time, because it might look different. What support you need after you find out a cycle wasn't successful might look very different than the support your partner needs during that time. And if your partner isn't aware of your love language and how to properly support you, that might cause more friction and tension at a time where you're already going to be on edge. It's not going to be easy to push you over. So having that knowledge is going to be really helpful for them. So there's 5 love languages in total. Words of affirmation. So this is I love yous, saying kind compliments, basically verbally telling you how they feel about you, and you hearing that, you getting those words of affirmation is what truly makes you feel supported and comforted in that time. So if you're someone who really just needs a partner to just verbally tell you where they're at, how they're feeling, that would be words of affirmation. And I think sometimes we can, thinking back on like my younger years, we can think, I can hear conversations of like friends of mine in university and just being like, oh, he's mad because he thinks I'm like constantly looking for validation, that I'm constantly looking to be validated, that we're good, we're strong, blah, blah, blah. But it's not necessarily a bad quality. It just means that you need those words of affirmation, and that's okay. Second is quality time. So this is undivided attention. This is attention where there's no phones, there's no TV, there's just you and your partner or you and whoever doing something together that feels like a strong, connected quality time. No distractions. The third is acts of service. So this one is basically where someone goes out of their way to make your life easier. So what I always think of is like when Tyler takes it upon himself to just clean up. That is like a huge act of service for me that like really, really makes me incredibly happy because I didn't have to ask. I didn't have to nag. It just happened. And it's like making coffee in the morning, taking the dog for a walk without having to be prompted, like just doing things that make your life easier. If that's something that really lights you up and really makes you go, oh yeah, like our love is strong, then acts of service is probably a high up love language for you. The fourth one is gifts. So this one I think a lot of people get a bit up in arms about because they're like, if they score high, they'll be like, but it's not about material goods. And gifts aren't always about material goods, and it's not about value of gift either in terms of cost, but meaning of gifts. A free gift, a homemade gift that has meaning and value to you and then is given to you in a gift format can be all that you need. So it's not necessarily about money value. It's not that you need these high cost material goods, but the actual act of giving meaningful gifts is how you receive that love validation. And then the last one is physical touch, which I find when I have these conversations with clients, physical touch tends to be a pretty common one for most men and a semi-common one for most women. But when physical touch isn't necessary, not that you don't like physical touch or being intimate or cuddling or holding hands, it's not that you don't like that, but if it's not high up on your love language list, that might not be what you actually need in times of turmoil. So it might feel more suffocating. It might feel more overbearing if someone is using physical touch thinking that will be helpful, but for you, maybe it's words of affirmation. Maybe you need to be verbally told things are going to be okay, I love you, don't worry, but you don't necessarily need to be bear hugged all day long, right? Hey, Katie. Yeah, Katie says physical touch and quality time, and her husband's is quality time and acts of service. So you guys have an overcrossing one of quality time, which is great because it's going to be where you both likely gravitate when you want to reconnect. And then now you know that with your husband, acts of service is something for him, so you can use that to your advantage at a time when he maybe is feeling low or down. If I do something to make his life easier, he's going to recognize that as an act of love. And for him, he'll know that physical touch is really important to you. So even if he isn't high on physical touch, it's a bit of that middle ground compromise, knowing that for you, and it doesn't need to be sex, it doesn't need to be full on intimacy, but even just as you're walking by, you place your hands on their shoulders or your hands on their hips or just, gently letting them know I'm there, but with physical touch, that can be really nice as well. Some people will be very obviously one dominant love language. Some will be a mixture of two, of three. That's okay. Whatever you are is whatever you are. And you might find you just in mixtures, you might find sometimes you resonate more towards one than another, but still having this knowledge is important. And Katie just showed us a good example of being two, but also having differences. So you and your partner might have totally different love languages, and that's fine. It's completely fine. It doesn't mean that the relationship is doomed, But you can probably save some time of disagreement by knowing where each other stands in terms of love languages, because what works for you in terms of connection and comfort might not actually work for them. And this is where now we have that compromise. We meet each other in the middle, and you've had a conversation around what needs to be done when you're feeling down, what can actually be helpful when you're feeling down. And I think when we bring this back to, this is just general relationships across the board, I think is really important. But if we bring this back to the fertility journey, because this is such a freaking roller coaster ride of emotion, you're up, you're down, your highs are really high, your lows are really, really low. Each month it doesn't work for you. You just feel completely defeated and beaten. Having this information for how your partners can support you when you feel like that will be extremely useful. So let me know in the comments, do you ever feel like along this journey, this is a really common conversation we have inside fertility confidence method, that the one partner, typically the female partner, in a heterosexual relationship, feels like they're carrying all the burden and all the pain and suffering, and their partner maybe doesn't seem as bothered, doesn't have as much of a reaction. And that's not true for all relationships, obviously, but I find there's usually, a lot of times when I'm talking to couples, I'm usually talking to the female, and they're saying, I really struggle when my period starts. And sure, my partner, my husband, whoever, probably, does as well, but they don't really show it, or they don't talk about it all that much. And I think this is really common in our, feminine and masculine energetics of life. But I hear this quite a bit, and it can definitely cause some tension when you feel like maybe you're carrying all the burden and your other partner, it just maybe isn't suffering as much as you. So then you not only start going, well, what's wrong with me? But you also start going, well, what's wrong with them? Why aren't they bothered? So communicating how you feel with your partner, but basing it on, this is how I'm feeling in this moment. And when I feel like this is what I need from you to truly make me feel better. And that can be extremely helpful in a really, trying and difficult time. So let's say you score really high on acts of service. This is a big one for me, like I said at the beginning. Acts of service, anything to make my life easier. I'm insanely busy. I love my business, but it takes up a lot of my time. And I also have 2 children, and I would love to have some sort of a life outside of that, but I just don't. So, if you follow me on Instagram, which if you don't, you definitely should, and just come find me, Fertility Confidence Method. But I was talking the other week about how I just had to basically let go of the fact that my house is probably never going to be clean again. And whatever, it is what it is, until I have more time or we can get someone in regularly to clean. My kids just destroy it every night. And so I'm like, why am I spending 30 minutes to an hour every night cleaning my house when the next day I just have to do it again and again and again? And I just don't have time for that during the week. So it's not that we live in like a dumpster dive, but it could be tidier. And this was hard for me to let go of. But so for me, when my partner just tidies up anything, just cleans anything during the week, I'm like, oh yes, acts of service. So huge. It takes a lot of stress off of my brain, because even though I'm like, let it go, Kelsey, let it go, it still bothers me. I want to clean it, but I also want to rest. So I have prioritized rest when I can over me picking away at the house, basically. So when he does it, it makes me feel like he's supporting me in a really beautiful way that honestly sometimes he probably doesn't even understand it that way, or that he knows that he's doing that, but that's how I receive it. And it's helpful in our relationship, versus if no acts of service are being done, which doesn't happen. I'm very fortunate, but that can make me feel like, well, why do I have to do all the things? Everything is on my plate. Why am I not getting the support? So over the years, we've come to understand what is important to me. You know, me cleaning the house, sure, probably makes him happy, but not to the same degree. Whereas I find like pure joy over it. Or even like just making me a coffee in the morning. It's so simple. It takes 5 minutes. I can do it. But when he does it, that's huge for me. He doesn't drink coffee, so he doesn't get the same piece. So learning this about each other is in a life of busyness, of craziness, of roller coaster emotions, just having these little things that you guys can do for each other without it being this big grand event can be a really nice way to connect with your partner again in a very trying time for you guys as a couple. You know, sometimes the fertility journey brings you closer and sometimes it doesn't, because it's so emotionally driven. So when your period starts and you've been trying and it's just for you, it's another, failed cycle, by communicating your love language, your partner will be able to put that into motion for you. So maybe they cook you a nice dinner, maybe they clean up a room or two, do a home project. All of these acts of service are truly going to make you feel a lot more connected, loved, and respected by them. Versus on the flip side of that, if he didn't know that acts of service was important to you and he thought like she needs physical touch right now, like who wouldn't need physical touch, and just wanted to cuddle and snuggle and be intimate, and sure, I'm not saying you don't like that, but it's not maybe necessarily what you actually need in that moment, it might upset you. It might feel suffocating. So it goes both ways. Knowing this for your partner too is important. If his love language is physical touch and yours isn't, you need to make that extra effort for him on his end to hug and to kiss and to place that hand on his hip, on his shoulder as you walk by. Like I said, it doesn't need to be grand. It's not just about sex, but it's about having that connection of your neural networks. And that's really where love languages come into play. So I hope that you guys did the quiz. I hope that it prompts a really healthy and important conversation with your loved ones and setting up how you can support each other in the 2-week wait during that period before those days actually happen, so that it's not an in the moment, maybe more angry conversation or issue, but now you know when the time comes, if you're not successful, both of you have some tools in your toolkit to help ease a little bit of that pressure. So I hope that was helpful for you. I find this stuff so fascinating. Let me know, even if you're watching the replay, grab the quiz, do the quiz. Let me know in the comments what you got. Let me know what your partner got. Let me know if you're surprised maybe by what you got. And let's just start a little conversation and we can have some conversation in the comments about what are examples of some of the love languages, or how do you perceive acts of service? How do you perceive gifts? And I think that would be really cool. So I hope everyone has a really wonderful rest of their day and a beautiful weekend, and I'll talk to you guys all soon.